The war had been going on for 300 years before anyone on Earth even knew it existed. Far away, past the edge of the solar system, past the old maps and the old dreams of humanity, empires of strange beings fought over stars and planets that no human eye had ever seen. Earth was small. Earth was quiet. Earth was, for a long time, forgotten. That changed on a cold morning in March, when the Deep Space Listening Station on the far side of the moon picked up a signal that made every alarm in the building scream at once. Dr. Amara Voss was the first to see it. She was tired, her coffee was cold, and she had been staring at the same star charts for 6 hours straight. When the signal came in, she almost didn't believe her own eyes. It was not noise. It was not a natural radio burst from a dying star. It was structured. It had patterns. It was, without any doubt, a message. She called her supervisor. Her supervisor called the director. Within an hour, 3 governments knew. Within a day, every government on Earth knew. Within a week, the whole world was watching the sky with new eyes, afraid of what they might see. The message, once decoded by machines, far smarter than any human mind, was simple and terrifying. It was not addressed to Earth. It was a battle report, sent from one alien fleet to another, discussing troop losses and a supply route through a system that human astronomers called Sol, Earth's own sun, Earth's own home. Humanity was not being greeted. Humanity was being noticed as an obstacle in someone else's war. For the next 2 years, the world argued about what to do. Some people wanted to hide, to go dark, to send no signals and hope the war passed by, like a storm that never quite touched land. Others wanted to reach out, to say hello, to explain that Earth was full of people who only wanted peace. A small number of scientists and soldiers believed something else entirely. They believed that hiding would not work, and that begging would not work either. They believed that if the war came to Earth's doorstep, humanity would need to fight. That small number of people were the ones who built the underwater cities. It had started long before the signal was found. Rising seas and dying coastlines had already pushed some nations to build strange things beneath the waves. Floating platforms, deep-sea farms, research domes anchored to the ocean floor. When the war signal was discovered, these projects were quietly folded into something new. Money that used to go to space stations now went to the bottom of the sea. The logic was simple. The enemy, whoever they were, watched the sky. Deep water hid heat, hid engines, hid the flash of construction lasers and the hum of reactors, in a way that no surface base or orbital station ever could. The ocean became humanity's secret workshop. The largest of these hidden cities was called Meridian. It sat 2 kilometers below the surface of the Pacific, built into the walls of an old volcanic trench, where the water pressure alone was enough to crush most machines, built before the war began. Meridian was not just a city, it was a shipyard, a fortress, and a home for nearly 40,000 people who had chosen to live their entire lives without ever seeing the sun. Commander Rhea Okafor had lived in Meridian for 11 years. She had been a young naval officer when she first volunteered for the Deep Water Program, back when it was still called Coastal Defense Research, in every public document, even though everyone involved knew the truth. She was not young anymore. Her hair had gone gray early, her hands were scarred from years of gonzo with machines that did not forgive mistakes, and her eyes held the tired, steady look of someone who had spent a decade preparing for a war she hoped would never come. It came anyway. The first sign was small. A fishing trawler off the coast of Chile picked up an object on its sonar that should not have existed. A smooth, dark shape moving through the deep water, far faster than any submarine humanity had ever built. The trawler's captain reported it as a strange current or a large sea creature. The Navy knew better. They sent a stealth drone to investigate, and the drone never came back. 3 days later, a satellite recorded a flash of light entering the atmosphere over the South Pacific. It was too slow to be a meteor and too fast to be an aircraft. It came down somewhere near the Mariana Trench, not far from Meridian at all, and then it vanished from every sensor humanity had. Rhea was in the command center when the report came through. The room went quiet. Analysts stopped typing. Someone's coffee cup stayed frozen halfway to their mouth. Everyone understood what this meant, even before anyone said it out loud. "It's a scout," said Lieutenant Commander Tomas Reyes, the head of Meridian's defense division. He was younger than Rhea, But he had a calm, steady voice that made people trust him, even when the news was bad. Small profile, high speed, no weapon signature that we can detect. This isn't an attack. This is someone checking to see what's down here. Which means they already suspect something is down here, Rhea said. Tomas nodded slowly. Which means we're out of time. For 11 years, Meridian had been building. In the deepest chambers of the city, hidden behind walls of reinforced coral steel and layers of insulation designed to hide heat signatures, sat 6 warships. They were not built like ocean submarines, and they were not built like the space fighters humanity had only ever seen in old science fiction movies. They were something new, something born from the strange marriage of deep-sea engineering and stolen glimpses of alien technology that had washed up, quite literally, on Earth's shores over the years, in the wreckage of ships that had crashed into the sea by accident. The ships were called Trident-class vessels, long and narrow, built to survive crushing ocean pressure on the way down, and the total vacuum of space on the way up. They were humanity's answer to a question nobody had wanted to ask. What happens when the war finds us? The lead engineer of the Trident program was a woman named Priya Chandrasekhar, and she had spent more sleepless nights in the shipyard than she could count. She was younger than both Rhea and Tomas, barely 30, but she had a mind that saw machines the way other people saw faces, full of small details that told a whole story. When the alarm came through announcing the scout ship, she was already halfway to the shipyard control room before anyone called her name. "Talk to me," Rhea said when Priya arrived, breathless, her uniform still half-buttoned from being pulled out of bed. 4 of the 6 ships are combat-ready, Priya said. The 5th needs another 2 weeks on the reactor housing. The 6th is still an empty shell. We haven't even installed the drive core. 2 weeks, Rhea repeated. Do we have 2 weeks? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. The scout ship did not attack. For 6 days, it sat somewhere in the deep trenches near Meridian, silent and still, doing nothing that any sensor could detect except existing. Rhea imagined, more than once, some alien pilot sitting in a cockpit far below the waves, staring at readings that made no sense to them, trying to understand why there was a city humming with life at the bottom of an ocean on a planet their war reports had marked as empty and unimportant. On the 7th day, the scout ship moved. It rose slowly through the water, its outline glimpsed only for a moment by one of Meridian's outer sensor buoys, before it broke the surface of the Pacific and shot up into the sky, faster than any human aircraft could follow. Within minutes, it was gone, back out past the orbit of the moon, back toward whatever fleet had sent it. The city held its breath for 3 days after that. Then, on the 4th day, everything changed. A single alien ship, far larger than the Scout, entered Earth's solar system. It did not hide. It did not sneak. It came in slow and steady, broadcasting nothing, asking nothing, simply moving toward Earth the way a wolf moves toward a herd it has already decided to eat. Every space agency on the planet detected it within hours. Every government was told within the day, and within Meridian, Rhea Okafor stood in the command center, looking at the projection of that ship's slow approach, and she understood that the world she had spent 11 years preparing for had finally, truly, arrived. "How long until it reaches Earth orbit?" she asked. "At current speed," said the analyst at the console, her voice tight. 11 days. 11 days. Not enough time to finish the 6th ship. Barely enough time to finish training the crews for the 5th. Rhea closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of every choice she had made in the last decade pressing down on her shoulders. Then she opened them again, because there was no time left for doubt. "Get me Tomas and Priya," she said. "We move up the timeline. All of it." Word spread through Meridian like a current through still water. In the residential domes, families who had lived their whole lives 2 kilometers under the sea heard the news through the city's speaker system, a calm voice explaining that an unknown vessel was approaching Earth and that the defense fleet was being placed on high alert. Children asked their parents if the aliens were going to hurt them. Parents did not always know how to answer. In the training halls, young pilots who had spent years practicing in simulators now found themselves being told to report to their actual ships. Among them was a 23-year-old named Kaito Lindquist, born and raised in Meridian, a child of 2 engineers who had helped build the very shipyard he now stood in. Kaito had trained for this moment for 5 years, ever since he was old enough to enlist. He had imagined it 1,000 times in his head. Standing there now, staring up at the smooth gray hull of the Trident-class ship he had been assigned to, all his imagination fell away, and left only a simple, honest fear. He was not alone in that fear. Every pilot standing beside him felt it too. But fear, Rhea had told them many times during training, was not the enemy. Fear was proof that you understood what you were about to do. The enemy was letting fear stop you from doing it anyway. Over the next 4 days, Meridian worked without rest. Engineers crawled through the guts of the fifth ship, finishing systems that had been scheduled for 2 more weeks of testing. Pilots ran drill after drill, learning to fly ships that could survive both crushing ocean depths and the emptiness of space, a transition no human pilot had ever actually made outside a simulator. Rhea barely slept, moving between the command center, the shipyard, and the training halls, checking every system twice, then a third time, because there would be no fixing mistakes once the ships left the water. Priya worked longest of all. She personally oversaw the final testing of the fifth ship's reactor, running simulation after simulation, until her eyes burned and her hands shook from exhaustion. On the 4th night, when the reactor finally passed every test she could throw at it, she sat down on the cold metal floor of the shipyard and allowed herself, for just a moment, to cry. Not from sadness, from relief, and from fear, and from the strange, heavy pride of watching something she had built with her own hands become ready to fly into a war none of them had asked for. On the 5th day, the alien ship's course became clear. It was not stopping at Mars, or the asteroid belt, or any of the outer defenses humanity had quietly built over the years. It was coming straight for Earth, and its trajectory suggested it intended to enter low orbit directly above the Pacific Ocean, directly above Meridian. "They found us," Tomas said quietly, standing beside Rhea as they studied the projection. "Maybe," Rhea said, "or maybe they're just coming for the whole planet, and we happen to be underneath the part of the ocean closest to their approach vector. Does it matter?" Rhea looked at the 6 ships resting in their bays below the command center, 4 of them fully ready, 1 freshly finished, 1 still an empty shell, waiting for a heart that would not come in time. She thought of the 40,000 people living in the domes above the shipyard, families and children and old men and women who had built lives at the bottom of the sea, because the surface world had told them it was the only way to keep humanity's secret war preparations safe. "No," she said finally, "it doesn't matter why they're coming. It only matters that we're ready when they get here." On the 6th day, Rhea called every commanding officer, every senior engineer, and every ship captain into the largest briefing room in Meridian. Kaito was there, along with the other young pilots, sitting quietly in the back rows, listening, as Rhea laid out the plan for humanity's first battle, in a war that had already been raging for 3 centuries without them. "We do not know what that ship wants," Rhea said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. "We do not know if it plans to attack, to observe, or to demand our surrender, before we've even had the chance to speak. What we do know is this. Humanity has spent 11 years building something the rest of the galaxy does not expect. They think Earth is empty. They think this planet is nothing but water and silence. They are wrong." She looked around the room, at the tired, frightened, determined faces staring back at her. "Tomorrow, if that ship enters our atmosphere with hostile intent, Meridian will do something no city on Earth has ever done. We will launch warships from beneath the ocean, straight up through the water, straight into the sky, and straight into space. We will meet them not as frightened prey, but as a species that has been quietly preparing to defend itself for over a decade." Nobody in the room spoke. The weight of what she had said settled over everyone, like the pressure of the deep water above their heads. "I will not lie to you," Rhea continued. "We are small. We are new to this. The enemy has fought wars across the stars for 300 years, and we have fought nothing but simulations and our own doubts. But we did not build Meridian, we did not build these ships, and we did not train for 11 years, just to hide in the dark and hope the storm passes us by." She paused, letting her words settle. "Tomorrow, humanity might go to war, and if it does, it will not go to war alone in the sky. It will go to war rising up out of the very ocean that gave life to this planet in the first place." That night, nobody in Meridian slept easily. Kaito lay awake in his small quarters, listening to the distant hum of the shipyard machines through the walls, thinking about his parents, about the surface world he had only ever seen in photographs, about the strange fact that he might die tomorrow fighting an enemy from another star, in defense of oceans he had spent his whole life beneath but never truly seen. Above the water, satellites tracked the alien ship's steady approach. Below the water, in the deepest part of the Pacific, 6 warships sat ready in their bays, their reactors warm, their crews restless, waiting for the order that would send them rising up through 2 kilometers of dark water, toward a sky none of them knew if they would ever see again. The war had reached Earth's oceans, and for the first time in human history, humanity was ready to answer. The alien ship entered Earth's atmosphere at dawn, seen first by satellites, then by telescopes, then by anyone on the surface who happened to be looking up at the right moment. It came down slow, almost lazy, as if it did not fear anything the planet below could throw at it. It was enormous, far larger than the scout ship that had visited a week earlier, shaped like a long dark blade cutting through the clouds. In Meridian, 2 kilometers beneath the Pacific, the command center was silent, except for the soft beeping of instruments and the low hum of the city's machines. Rhea Okafor stood at the main console, watching the ship's descent on the display, her jaw tight. Beside her, Tomas Reyes kept his eyes fixed on the tactical readout, waiting for any sign of weapons activity. "It's slowing down," Tomas said. "Matching orbit, low altitude, right above the Pacific Basin." "Right above us," Rhea said quietly. For nearly an hour, the ship did nothing but hover, high above the ocean, its shadow stretching across the water like a dark cloud that refused to move. Then, without warning, it released something. A dozen smaller shapes broke away from the main hull and began to descend, moving faster than anything humanity's own aircraft could manage. "Drones," Tomas said, "or fighters. Small craft. Definitely armed. This time we're picking up weapon signatures." Rhea did not hesitate. "Sound the alert. All hands to stations. Priya, status on the ships?" Priya Chandrasekhar's voice came back over the comm, tight but steady. "All 4 combat-ready ships, fueled and armed. 5th ship is powered up. Final checks running now. We can launch in 6 minutes if needed." "Make it 5, Rhea said. The alarm rang through every corridor of Meridian, a steady, rising tone that every person in the city had trained to respond to for years, but had never actually heard outside of drills. Families moved calmly toward the shelter domes, following instructions they had practiced 100 times. In the shipyard, pilots ran to their ships, sealing themselves into cockpits, built to withstand crushing depths and the emptiness of space. Kaito Lindquist strapped himself into the pilot seat of the 4th Trident-class ship, his hands trembling slightly as he ran through the pre-launch checklist. Beside him, in the gunner's seat, sat his old friend Naledi Dubé, a woman he had trained with since they were both teenagers, dreaming of a war they hoped would never come. "You good?" Naledi asked, her voice calm despite the tension in the small cockpit. "No," Kaito admitted. "You?" "Not even a little," she said, and managed a small, tight smile. "Let's go, anyway." Above the surface, the alien drones descended toward the ocean, spreading out in a wide formation, scanning the water below with beams of energy that lit up the waves like strange, cold lightning. They were searching. Whatever their masters suspected about Meridian's existence, they had sent these smaller craft to confirm it. In the command center, the sensor operators tracked the drone's search pattern with growing dread. "They're sweeping in a spiral," one analyst reported. "Getting closer to our position with each pass. At this rate, they'll have a direct scan on Meridian's outer hull within 20 minutes. Rhea's mind raced through the options. Stay hidden and hope the scan failed, and risk being caught completely unprepared if it succeeded. Or launch now, take the fight to the drones before they could report back, and reveal Meridian's existence to the entire alien fleet above. She looked at Tomas, he looked back at her, and in his eyes, she saw the same conclusion she had already reached. "They already suspect we're here," Tomas said. "That's why the drones are searching this exact spot. Waiting won't change that. It'll only give them more time to confirm it on their terms instead of ours." Rhea took a breath. "Launch the fleet." The order went out across every channel in Meridian. In the shipyard, massive doors built into the volcanic rock walls began to open, revealing dark tunnels that led up through 2 kilometers of ocean toward the surface. The 4 combat-ready ships powered their engines, the deep hum rising into a roar that shook the shipyard floor. Trident 1, 2, 3, and 4. You are cleared for launch, Priya's voice announced over the comm, steady despite the shaking of her own hands as she watched the launch sequence unfold. Godspeed. The ships rose from their bays, engines glowing, and shot upward through the launch tunnels, water rushing past their hulls at incredible speed. In the cockpit of Trident 4, Kaito gripped the controls tightly as the ship shuddered from the pressure of the ascent, his stomach lurching as the darkness of the deep ocean rushed by outside his viewport. Depth 2,000 meters, rising fast, Naledi called out, reading the instruments beside him. 1,500, 1,000. The ships had been designed for exactly this moment, built to survive both the crushing pressure of the deep sea and the sudden transition to open air and space, but no amount of simulation could fully prepare a pilot for actually living through it. Kaito felt his whole body pressed back into his seat as the ship accelerated, the water outside growing lighter and lighter as they approached the surface. 500 meters, 200. Breaking surface, in 3, 2, 1. The 4 ships burst out of the Pacific Ocean in an explosion of white spray, water streaming off their dark hulls as they shot up into the sky, engines transitioning smoothly from underwater propulsion to full atmospheric thrust. For the first time in human history, warships had launched directly from beneath the sea into open air, and within seconds, they were rocketing upward toward the waiting alien drones. The drones reacted instantly, breaking their search pattern and turning to face the sudden threat rising from the ocean below. Energy weapons flared to life along their hulls, and the sky above the Pacific lit up with the first shots of a battle that would change everything. Contact, contact, 12 enemy craft, engaging, Kaito shouted, banking Trident 4 hard to avoid a beam of blue-white energy that sliced through the air where his ship had been a moment before. In the command center below the waves, Rhea watched the battle unfold on her display, feeling every hit and every near miss like a blow to her own chest. The 4 Trident ships moved with a speed and agility that surprised even their own pilots, thanks to years of training and simulation that had prepared them for exactly this kind of high-speed combat. Trident 1, piloted by a veteran officer named Captain Elena Vasquez, took the lead, weaving through the enemy formation and returning fire with the ship's main cannon, a weapon built using technology reverse-engineered from alien wreckage that had washed ashore over the years. The first shot missed. The second struck true, tearing through the hull of one of the drones and sending it spiraling down into the ocean in a trail of fire and smoke. First blood, Elena called out over the comm, her voice tight with adrenaline. Repeat. First kill confirmed. 1 enemy drone destroyed. A cheer rose in the command center, quickly hushed by Rhea's raised hand. The battle was far from over. The remaining 11 drones regrouped, their formation shifting into something tighter and more coordinated, clearly reacting to the loss of one of their own. They began to focus their fire on Trident 2, a ship piloted by a young officer named Sam Okuosa, who found himself suddenly surrounded on 3 sides by enemy fire. I need support. I've got 3 on me, Sam called out, his voice cracking with panic as his ship shook from a near miss. On my way, Kaito responded, pulling Trident 4 into a steep dive and cutting across the formation to draw fire away from his struggling comrade. Naledi opened fire from the gunner's seat, her shots forcing 2 of the drones to break off and evade. The battle raged for nearly 10 minutes, a chaotic dance of light and fire high above the Pacific Ocean, visible from coastal cities as strange flashes in the morning sky that made news anchors around the world scramble to explain what was happening. By the time it ended, 7 of the 12 alien drones had been destroyed, at the cost of significant damage to Trident 2 and Trident 3, though both ships remained flyable. The surviving 5 drones broke off the attack and retreated back toward the massive mothership still hovering high above the atmosphere, clearly reporting what they had found, back to whatever command structure controlled them. They're running, Naledi said, watching the retreating drones on her display. Should we pursue? Negative. Rhea's voice came through the comm, calm and firm. All ships, return to base. We've confirmed what we needed to confirm. They know we're here now. No point chasing them into a fight we're not ready to have. The 4 Trident ships turned and descended back toward the ocean, diving beneath the waves and returning to the safety of Meridian's hidden shipyard. As they touched down in their bays, the crews emerged shaking with adrenaline, some laughing with relief, others simply staring at nothing, trying to process what they had just lived through. Kaito climbed out of Trident 4's cockpit on unsteady legs, and Naledi caught his arm to help him stay upright. "We did it," she said, her voice somewhere between disbelief and pride. "We actually did it." "We survived it," Kaito corrected, but he was smiling despite himself. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." In the command center, Ria allowed herself a small breath of relief as she watched the damage reports come in. No pilots lost. 2 ships damaged but repairable. 7 enemy drones destroyed. It was, by any measure, a victory. But she knew, better than anyone in that room, that it was only the very first move in a much larger game. "They know exactly where we are now," she said to Tomas, who stood beside her studying the same reports. "That mothership is still up there. This isn't over. If anything, it's only just beginning." "What do you think they'll do?" Tomas asked. Ria considered the question carefully. If this is truly part of a galactic war that's been going on for 300 years, then whoever commands that ship has fought battles far larger and far worse than this one. They'll report back. They'll bring more ships. And next time, they won't send drones to scout. They'll send something meant to actually fight. Her prediction proved accurate faster than anyone expected. Within 6 hours, sensors around the world detected the mothership altering its position, moving to a higher orbit, clearly repositioning for something. Deep space telescopes picked up faint energy signatures, suggesting the ship was transmitting a long-range signal, likely a report to a larger fleet somewhere beyond the edge of the solar system. That evening, world leaders held an emergency session, broadcast to every corner of the planet. For the first time, the existence of the underwater shipyards was revealed to the public, along with footage of the battle above the Pacific, carefully edited to show humanity's warships in the best possible light. The reaction across the globe was a mixture of fear, disbelief, and for many people, a strange and sudden surge of pride. In Meridian, Ria watched the broadcast in her private quarters, feeling the weight of the world's reaction pressing down on her even from 2 kilometers beneath the sea. The secret was out now. There was no going back to quiet preparation in the shadows. Whatever came next, it would come in full view of the entire planet and the entire galaxy. Priya found her there afterward, carrying 2 cups of something that was supposed to pass for coffee in the deep water city, though it never quite tasted right without real sunlight to grow the beans properly. "You did good today," Priya said, handing her one of the cups. "We got lucky today," Ria replied. 7 drones is nothing compared to what's coming. If that mothership really is calling for reinforcements, we're going to need every ship we can build, and we're going to need them faster than we ever planned. "The 6th ship still doesn't have a drive core," Priya said quietly. "Then find one," Ria said. "Steal it, build it, pray for it. I don't care how. We do not have the luxury of time anymore." Priya nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what Ria was asking. She had already been pushing herself and her team to the very edge of exhaustion, and now she would have to push further still. Outside the walls of Meridian, in the deep dark water of the Pacific Trench, the ocean moved on, as it always had, indifferent to the war that had just found humanity for the first time. But within the city, and within every command center and government building on the surface, everyone understood that something fundamental had changed. Earth was no longer hidden. Earth was no longer safe in its ignorance. The galaxy had finally noticed this small, quiet planet, and it had discovered that the people living on it were not as defenseless as they seemed. 3 days after the battle, the mothership still had not moved from its new position, but sensors detected something new. A second, then a third, then a 4th energy signature, entering the solar system from deep space, following the exact same trajectory the first ship had taken. Reinforcements were coming, and they were coming fast. In Meridian, Ria called another briefing. This time, not just for the officers and engineers, but for every single person who lived within the walls of the city. She stood before a crowd of nearly 40,000 people, families who had spent their whole lives building toward a moment none of them had truly believed would come, and she told them the truth, without softening a single word of it. "More ships are coming," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the great central dome of Meridian. "We do not know how many, and we do not know exactly when they will arrive. What we do know is this: the enemy has fought this war across the stars for 300 years, and they have never once faced an opponent quite like us. We are not just soldiers and pilots. We are engineers who built warships in secret beneath the ocean. We are families who raised children in the dark, waiting for a fight none of us wanted, but all of us prepared for. She paused, looking out at the faces before her, faces marked by fear, but also by something else, something that had grown quietly in the deep water city over 11 long years of preparation. When they come again, we will be ready. Not because we are stronger than them, not yet, but because we have never stopped preparing, not for a single day, and that, more than any weapon, is what will carry us through whatever comes next. The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, a single person began to clap, and the sound spread through the great dome, until it filled the entire chamber. A strange and defiant kind of applause rising up from a city built at the bottom of the sea, ready to meet a war that had traveled across the stars to find it. Above the ocean, the mothership waited, and somewhere far beyond the edge of the solar system, more ships were already on their way. The battle for Earth's oceans had only just begun. 6 days after the first battle above the Pacific, the alien fleet arrived in full. Sensors around the world tracked the approach with growing dread. What had begun as a single scout ship, then a single mothership, had grown into a formation of 18 vessels of varying sizes, moving through the solar system in a tight, disciplined pattern that spoke of centuries of military experience. The largest of the ships dwarfed even the first mothership that had scanned Meridian, a vessel so massive that early estimates suggested it could carry thousands of smaller fighters within its hull. In Meridian, the command center had not been empty for a single hour since the fleet was first detected. Rhea Okafor had slept perhaps 10 hours total across the past 6 days, surviving on coffee that never tasted right, and a grim determination that refused to let her rest, while the fate of her city, and possibly her entire species, hung in the balance. "Fleet has entered high orbit," the sensor operator reported, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "They're not moving toward any other part of the planet. Their formation is centered directly above the Pacific." "They know exactly where we are," Tomas said quietly, standing beside Rhea as they studied the projection of 18 alien warships arranged in the sky above their hidden city. Rhea did not answer immediately. She was doing the math in her head, the same math she had been running for 6 days straight. 18 enemy ships against 6 of their own, only 5 of which were fully combat ready. The 6th, still sitting in its bay, with an unfinished drive core that Priya's team had been fighting to complete around the clock. "Status on Ship 6, Rhea asked. Priya's voice came through the comm, exhausted but steady. "Drive core installed 4 hours ago. We're running diagnostics now. I can't promise it's ready for combat, but it can fly." "That will have to be enough," Rhea said. "Get every pilot we have suited up. All 6 ships, full combat readiness." Across the shipyard, the mood was tense but focused. Pilots who had spent years training for exactly this moment moved through the halls with quiet purpose, checking their gear, running through mental checklists, saying quiet goodbyes to friends and family through comm channels in case this battle did not go the way anyone hoped. Kaito Lindquist stood beside Trident 4, running his hand along the cool metal of the hull, feeling the weight of what was coming settle over him, like the pressure of the deep water above. Naledi Dube joined him a moment later, her face pale, but her jaw set with determination. 18 ships, she said quietly. "That's a lot more than 12 drones." "Yeah," Kaito agreed. "But we've got 6 warships now instead of 4, and we know a lot more than we did 6 days ago." "Small comfort," Naledi said, though there was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Elsewhere in the shipyard, a new pilot climbed into the cockpit of the newly finished 6th ship, Trident 6. Her name was Captain Yara Solberg, one of the most experienced pilots in Meridian, chosen specifically to fly the least tested ship in the fleet, because if anyone could handle an unpredictable vessel in the middle of a battle, it was her. Beside her sat her gunner, a quiet young man named Theo Marchetti, who had barely spoken since the briefing, but whose hands were steady as stone as he ran through the weapon systems checklist. "Talk to me, Theo," Yara said, noticing his silence. "I'm fine," he said. "Just thinking about my sister. She's on the surface, in Lisbon." I hope she's watching this from somewhere safe. She will be, Yara said firmly. And when this is over, you'll tell her all about it. In the command center, Rhea gathered her senior officers for one final briefing before the launch. The tactical display showed the full picture: 18 alien ships in high orbit, their exact weapons capabilities still largely unknown, against 6 Trident-class ships that had never faced an enemy force anywhere near this size. We cannot win a straight fight against 18 ships, Rhea said bluntly. Nobody in this room should pretend otherwise. Our advantage is not numbers. Our advantage is that they still don't fully understand what we are, or what we're capable of. We use that. We use speed. We use surprise. And we use the ocean itself as our shield, for as long as we possibly can. She outlined the plan carefully. The 6 Trident ships would not launch all at once in an obvious formation. Instead, they would launch from different points along the vast underwater trench that housed Meridian, breaking the surface at scattered locations across dozens of kilometers, confusing the enemy's tracking systems, and making it harder for the alien fleet to predict where the next threat would emerge. Elena, Sam, and Kaito, your ships will draw their attention from the north, Rhea explained, pointing to the tactical display. Yara, you'll take the newly finished 6th ship along with the 4th and 5th ships from the south, striking at their flank, while their attention is divided. And what's the actual objective? Elena asked. We're not going to destroy 18 ships with 6 of our own, no matter how clever the formation is. Rhea's expression was grim. Our objective is to make them bleed enough that they reconsider whether Earth is worth the cost. We are not trying to win this battle outright. We are trying to survive it, and to prove that attacking this planet comes with a price they did not expect to pay. The briefing ended, and the pilots moved to their ships. Rhea remained in the command center, watching as the 6 vessels prepared for launch, knowing that she would not be flying alongside them, that her job was to guide the battle from below the waves, while others risked their lives above. At exactly 0600 hours, the order was given, and the ocean above Meridian's shipyard erupted with 6 streams of white water as the Trident-class ships shot upward through the depths, breaking the surface in scattered locations exactly as planned, and rocketing into the sky toward the waiting alien fleet. The battle that followed would later be studied by military historians for generations, the first true engagement between human forces and an alien war fleet, fought in the skies and low orbit above the Pacific Ocean. Elena Vasquez led the northern group, pulling her ship into a wide arc designed to draw the attention of the largest alien vessels away from the southern approach. The alien fleet reacted quickly, several dozen smaller fighter craft launching from the larger ships to intercept the 3 human vessels. Contact. Contact. At least 30 enemy fighters incoming, Elena reported, her voice steady, despite the overwhelming numbers now bearing down on her small formation. Copy that, Rhea replied from the command center. Hold formation. Use the terrain. Don't let them box you in. Elena banked hard, pulling her ship down toward the cloud cover, using the thick weather system over the Pacific as cover from the enemy's sensors. Sam and Kaito followed close behind, their ships weaving through the clouds in a tight formation that made it difficult for the enemy fighters to lock onto any single target. Meanwhile, to the south, Yara Solberg pushed the untested Trident 6 to its limits, testing systems that had barely finished their diagnostics only hours before. The ship handled better than she expected, responding smoothly to her controls despite the rushed preparation. Systems are holding steady, Theo reported from the gunner's seat. Weapons fully charged, targeting systems online. Good, Yara said, because we've got company. A group of 6 alien fighters broke off from the main fleet to intercept the southern formation, engaging Trident 4, 5, and 6 in a fierce exchange of fire. The ships moved through the sky in a deadly dance, energy weapons lighting up the air as both sides fought for position. Theo's first shot tore through the wing of an enemy fighter, sending it spiraling down toward the ocean in a trail of smoke. It was the first confirmed kill of the battle, and it would not be the last. Back in the northern engagement, the situation grew increasingly desperate as more and more enemy fighters joined the fight, overwhelming the 3 human ships with sheer numbers. Elena's ship took a direct hit to its rear stabilizer, sending it into a violent spin that took every ounce of her skill to correct. Elena, status, Rhea's voice crackled through the comm, tension evident even through the distortion. Still flying, Elena gritted out, wrestling her ship back under control. Barely. Kaito saw the hit land on Elena's ship and reacted instantly, pulling Trident 4 into a steep dive to draw fire away from his struggling commanding officer. 3 enemy fighters broke off to pursue him, and for a terrifying few seconds, Kaito found himself alone against overwhelming odds, his ship shaking from near misses as energy beams sliced through the air around him. "Kaito, you've got 3 on your tail," Naledi shouted from the gunner's seat, spinning the ship's main weapon to return fire. I know. Just give me a shot," Kaito yelled back, pulling the ship into a tight corkscrew maneuver that had only ever worked in simulations, praying it would work now, in the real, unforgiving sky. The maneuver bought Naledi the angle she needed. Her shot struck true, destroying one of the pursuing fighters in a flash of light, and the remaining 2 broke off, wary now of the human ship's unpredictable movements. Down in the command center, Rhea watched the battle unfold across multiple screens, her heart pounding with every near miss, every hit taken, every kill confirmed. The battle was chaotic, brutal, and far more costly than the first engagement had been. But slowly, painfully, the humans were holding their own. After nearly 20 minutes of intense combat, the alien fighters began to pull back, regrouping near the larger warships still hovering in high orbit. The 6 human ships, battered but still flying, regrouped near the edge of the cloud cover, taking a brief moment to assess the damage. "Damage report," Rhea called out over the comm. "Trident 1's rear stabilizer is shot, but she's still flying," Elena reported. "Trident 2 took some hits to the hull, nothing critical. Trident 4 and 5 are holding steady. Trident 6 performed better than expected for an untested ship." "Casualties?" There was a pause before Elena answered. "None confirmed yet. Everyone's still with us." Rhea allowed herself a breath of relief, though she knew the battle was far from over. The alien fleet regrouping meant they were reassessing their strategy, and whatever came next would likely be far more coordinated than the first wave of fighters had been. Sure enough, within minutes, the massive lead warship began to move, positioning itself directly above the area where the human ships had first launched. A deep, resonant hum began to build within its hull, detectable even through the ship's own sensors, a sound that made every analyst in Meridian's command center go pale. "That's a weapons charge," Tomas said, his voice tight. "Something big. All ships, evade. Evade now," Rhea shouted into the comm, watching in horror as the massive warship's hull opened to reveal a weapon far larger than anything they had encountered so far. The 6 Trident ships scattered in every direction as a beam of pure white energy tore down from the alien warship, striking the ocean below with a force that sent a column of steam and water shooting hundreds of meters into the air. The beam missed every human ship, but the shockwave from the impact rocked all 6 vessels violently, sending alarms blaring through every cockpit. "That would have vaporized any of us if it had connected," Naledi said, her voice shaking slightly. "Then let's make sure it doesn't get a second shot," Kaito replied, gritting his teeth as he fought to stabilize his ship. In the command center, Rhea made a swift decision. "All ships, fall back to Meridian. We've done what we came to do. Continuing this fight risks losing ships we cannot replace." The order was met with no argument. The 6 battered but surviving Trident ships turned and dove back toward the ocean, diving beneath the waves and racing back toward the safety of Meridian's hidden shipyard, the alien fleet's fighters giving chase for only a short distance before pulling back, apparently unwilling or unable to follow the human ships into the deep water. As the ships touched down safely in their bays, the exhausted crews emerged to a shipyard filled with relief and quiet celebration. Every ship had survived, every pilot had come home, and the human fleet had proven, for the second time, that it could stand against the alien war machine and walk away to fight another day. But in the command center, Rhea Okafor stared at the tactical display showing the massive alien fleet still hovering in orbit above the Pacific, and she knew that the celebration in the shipyard, while earned, was premature. The enemy had tested their strength today. They had learned what humanity's ships could do, and more importantly, what they could not yet do. The next battle, she knew, would be far worse, and Meridian would need every single advantage it could find if humanity hoped to survive what was coming. In the week that followed the second battle, something unexpected happened. The alien fleet did not attack again. It simply waited, holding its position in high orbit above the Pacific, watching, studying, gathering information about the strange planet and the stranger ships that had risen from beneath its oceans to fight back. Rhea Okafor found the silence more unsettling than the battles themselves. War, she had learned over 11 years of preparation, was rarely as simple as a straight fight between two forces. It was patience and observation and the slow gathering of information before the real blow was struck. The enemy was doing exactly that now, and she had no way of knowing what conclusions they were reaching, or what they planned to do next. On the 5th day of the standoff, something happened that changed everything humanity thought it understood about the war. A small, unarmed vessel detached itself from the main alien fleet and began a slow, careful descent toward the Pacific Ocean, broadcasting a signal on every frequency humanity used for communication. It was not a weapon. It was not an attack. It was, unmistakably, an attempt to talk. The signal reached Meridian's command center within seconds, and Rhea found herself staring at a message that had been translated, imperfectly but understandably, by the combined effort of Earth's best linguists and codebreakers, working around the clock since the first contact with the alien war signal years earlier. The message was short. It said simply, "We wish to speak with those who built the ships beneath the water. We are not the ones who attacked you." The command center fell into stunned silence. "That's not the fleet that's been sitting up there?" Tomas asked, disbelief clear in his voice. "According to this message, no," Rhea said slowly, reading the translation again to make sure she had understood it correctly. "This message claims to be from a different faction entirely. It took 3 tense hours of careful communication, verified again and again by every intelligence agency on Earth, before the truth became clear. The 18 ships that had attacked Meridian belonged to an alien empire known, in the rough translation humanity's systems produced, as the Vorlon Dominion, a militaristic power that had been expanding across the galaxy for centuries, conquering or destroying every species unlucky enough to lie in its path. But the small vessel now approaching Earth belonged to something else, a coalition of smaller alien species, survivors of worlds the Vorlon Dominion had already conquered, who had banded together generations ago to resist the empire that had taken their homes. They called themselves the Free Accord, and they had been fighting a losing war against the Dominion for over a century. They had detected the battle above the Pacific through their own long-range sensors, and they had been shocked to see a species previously unknown to them, one with no history in any galactic record, successfully fighting off Dominion forces and surviving not one, but 2 direct engagements. "They want to know how we did it," Rhea said, reading through the full translated message with Tomas and Priya standing beside her. "They want to know if we would be willing to talk, possibly to work together against the Dominion." "Can we trust them?" Priya asked. "I don't know," Rhea admitted. "But right now, we're a single planet, facing an empire that has been conquering worlds for centuries. If there's a chance at allies, we cannot afford to ignore it." The decision to meet with the Free Accord representatives was not made lightly, nor was it made by Rhea alone. It went all the way up through Earth's Combined Government Council, a body formed in secret years earlier specifically to handle exactly this kind of crisis. After 2 full days of careful deliberation, the decision was made. Humanity would talk. The meeting took place not in Meridian itself, which remained a closely guarded secret, even from the alien visitors, but on a small, heavily defended surface platform, built specifically for this purpose, in the middle of the Pacific. Rhea attended personally, alongside 3 representatives from Earth's Government Council, and a small security detail, drawn from Meridian's best soldiers. The Free Accord delegation arrived in a shuttle, far smaller and less imposing than the massive Dominion warships that still hovered in orbit. When the aliens finally stepped out onto the platform, humanity got its first true look at another sentient species from beyond the stars. They were tall, taller than the average human, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted color slightly depending on the light, something between blue and gray. Their leader introduced herself through a translation device as Vesic Thorn, a name that felt strange on human tongues but was spoken with clear respect by the rest of her delegation. "You fought against the Dominion and survived," Vesic said, her translated voice carrying a tone of genuine curiosity. In 300 years, we have watched dozens of worlds fall to their first assault. Your species did not fall. We wish to understand why. Rhea studied the alien commander carefully before answering. We had time to prepare, years of it. We built our ships in secret, hidden beneath our oceans, where the Dominion could not see them forming. Vesik's expression, as much as an alien face could convey emotion recognizable to a human, seemed to shift into something like surprise. Hidden beneath your oceans. We had not considered such a strategy possible. Most species hide in the dark of space, or behind planetary shields. None have thought to hide beneath the water itself. It wasn't just a strategy, Rhea said. Water was already part of our world, part of our history. We simply used what we already had. The conversation that followed stretched over several hours, carefully translated and cross-checked by both sides. The Free Accord explained the broader shape of the Galactic War, a conflict that had consumed hundreds of worlds over 3 centuries, as the Vorlon Dominion expanded relentlessly outward, absorbing or destroying every species it encountered. The Free Accord itself was a coalition of the survivors, smaller alien nations who had lost their homeworlds but refused to simply disappear, banding together to fight a slow, grinding resistance against an empire far larger and more powerful than any of them individually. We have never won a major battle against the Dominion, Vesik admitted honestly. We survive, we delay, we wear them down where we can, but we have never truly defeated them. And you think we can help with that? Rhea asked. I think, Vesik said carefully, that a species capable of hiding an entire war fleet beneath an ocean, undetected for years, has a way of thinking that the Dominion has never encountered before. That kind of thinking may be exactly what this war has been missing. The offer, when it finally came, was straightforward. The Free Accord would share what technology and knowledge they could, technology gathered and adapted from a dozen different conquered worlds over the century of their resistance, in exchange for humanity's willingness to join their coalition and continue fighting alongside them against the Dominion. It was not a small decision. Joining the Free Accord meant openly declaring humanity's place in a galactic war that had already consumed hundreds of worlds, a war that showed no sign of ending soon. It meant painting an even larger target on Earth's back, drawing the full attention of an empire that had, until recently, barely known humanity existed. But the alternative, Rhea understood clearly, was facing the Dominion entirely alone, with only 6 warships and a single hidden city standing between Earth and total conquest. The decision, once again, went to Earth's Government Council, and this time, the debate stretched over an entire week, filled with heated arguments from leaders across the world. Some argued that joining an alien war would only speed up humanity's destruction. Others argued that hiding was no longer an option, not now that the Dominion knew Earth existed and had already sent one fleet to test its defenses. In the end, it was Rhea herself who was called before the council to give her final assessment, drawing on everything she had learned in 11 years of preparing for exactly this moment. We built Meridian because we believed the war would find us eventually, no matter how quietly we tried to live, she told the assembled leaders, her voice steady, despite the weight of the moment. That belief has now been proven true. The only question left is whether we face what comes next entirely alone, or whether we face it with allies who have already been fighting this same enemy for a century longer than we have. The Council's decision came 2 days later. Earth would join the Free Accord. Back in Meridian, the news arrived with a mixture of relief and renewed determination. Within days, the first shipments of Free Accord technology began arriving, carefully transported to Meridian's shipyard under the tightest security humanity could provide. Priya Chandrasekhar found herself working alongside alien engineers for the first time, comparing notes on ship design, weapon systems, and shield technology that had been refined across dozens of different species over the course of the long resistance war. Your reactor design is inefficient, said one of the Free Accord engineers, a quiet, careful being named Torek, who had been assigned to assist Priya's team. But the housing you have built for it, the way it survives your ocean's pressure, this is something none of our worlds ever developed. We can improve your reactors. You can teach us about pressure resistance none of our own engineers ever needed to consider. The exchange of knowledge flowed both ways, and within weeks, Meridian's shipyard had begun producing a new generation of Trident-class ships, built using a combination of human engineering and free accord technology, faster, more heavily armored, and armed with weapons that finally matched the capabilities of the Dominion fleet, still watching from orbit. Kaito Lindquist found himself training on the new systems alongside free accord pilots who had decades of combat experience against the Dominion, learning tactics and strategies that no human had ever needed before. It was humbling and exhausting, but it was also, he realized slowly, exactly the kind of preparation Earth needed if it hoped to survive what was coming. "You fly well for someone who has only fought 2 real battles," a free accord pilot named Ressa told him during one training session, her translated voice carrying a note of genuine respect. "Most species take years to develop the instincts you already show. We've had 11 years to prepare," Kaito said. "We just didn't know exactly what we were preparing for until recently." "That is often how it happens," Ressa said. "Preparation rarely waits for understanding. It simply happens, quietly, until the moment arrives that finally explains what it was all for." Meanwhile, the Dominion fleet in orbit had not remained idle during the weeks of negotiation and rebuilding. Sensors detected increased activity among the 18 warships, along with several new arrivals joining the fleet, bringing the total force hovering above the Pacific to nearly 30 vessels. Whatever the Dominion had concluded from its first 2 failed attacks, it was clear they had decided Earth was worth a much larger commitment of force. "They're building up for something big," Tomas reported during one of Meridian's daily briefings. "Our best estimate suggests they're waiting for an even larger fleet to arrive, before making a final push." "How long do we have?" Rhea asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3, if we're lucky." Rhea looked around the room, at the mixture of human and free accord officers, now working together, in Meridian's command center, a partnership that would have seemed impossible only a month earlier. "Then we use every single day we have left to get ready. This time, when they come, it won't just be 6 ships rising from the ocean. It will be everything we've built, everything we've learned, and everyone willing to stand and fight for this planet." Outside the walls of Meridian, the ocean continued its endless, patient movement, indifferent as always to the war being prepared within its depths. But within the city, and within the growing alliance between humanity and the Free Accord, something had shifted. What had begun as a desperate hidden defense had become something larger, the first chapter in humanity's place among the stars, written not in peace, but in the fire of a war that had finally, truly arrived. The Dominion fleet continued to grow in the skies above the Pacific, and somewhere far beyond the edge of the solar system, an even larger force was already gathering, preparing for what everyone in Meridian now understood would be the true test of everything humanity had built. The Dominion's true fleet arrived 19 days later, and when it did, every sensor on Earth and every ship in Meridian's shipyard understood, without needing to be told, that this was the battle that would decide everything. 63 ships entered the solar system in a formation so vast it stretched across a significant portion of the visible sky above the Pacific. Among them was a single vessel, larger than anything humanity or the Free Accord had ever recorded. A command ship so massive that Meridian's analysts initially struggled to believe the readings were accurate. "That's their flagship," said Vesic Thorn, standing in Meridian's command center alongside Rhea Okafor, studying the tactical display, with a grim expression that needed no translation to understand. "If that ship has come this far to personally oversee an invasion, it means the Dominion has decided your planet is a priority target, not simply a minor conquest." "Why would we suddenly matter that much?" Rhea asked. "Because you did something no other species has done in 300 years of this war," Vesic said. "You hid, you built in secret, and you fought back with technology they did not detect, until it was already rising out of your ocean to meet them. The Dominion does not fear strength alone. They fear what they cannot predict. You have become something they cannot predict." In the 19 days since the alliance with the Free Accord was formed, Meridian had transformed. The shipyard, once home to only 6 Trident-class vessels, now housed 22 ships, a combined fleet of upgraded human vessels and Free Accord warships that had been quietly gathering in Earth's oceans and in hidden pockets of the solar system, preparing for exactly this moment. Priya Chandrasekhar had barely left the shipyard in over 2 weeks, overseeing the final integration of Free Accord shield technology into the last of the new ships. Her eyes were permanently rimmed with exhaustion, but there was a fierce pride in the way she moved through the shipyard now, knowing that every ship rising from these bays carried a piece of her work embedded in its very structure. Kaito Lindquist stood in the briefing room alongside pilots from a dozen different worlds, human and alien voices mixing together in nervous conversation before the coming battle. Naledi sat beside him, running through the modified weapon systems on their upgraded Trident IV one final time in her mind. 63 ships, Naledi said quietly, against 22. Better odds than 6 against 18, Kaito replied, though his voice carried little real confidence. Not by much, she admitted. Rhea addressed the combined fleet one final time before the battle, her voice carrying through every ship's comm system, human and alien alike, translated instantly, for every pilot preparing to fly into what could be the final battle for Earth's survival. "We are not fighting this battle alone anymore," she said, standing before the assembled pilots, both human and free accord, gathered together in Meridian's largest hangar for the first time. "We fight today alongside allies who have resisted this same enemy for over a century, and we fight with technology built from the combined knowledge of a dozen worlds. But make no mistake, this will still be the hardest fight any of us has ever faced." She paused, looking out at the mixed crowd of faces, human and alien, all marked by the same quiet determination. "The Dominion believes that conquest is inevitable, that resistance only delays the outcome, never changes it. We are here today to prove that belief wrong, not because we are certain of victory, but because giving up was never something this planet was built to do." The order came at dawn. 22 ships launched from Meridian's shipyard, rising up through the deep water of the Pacific, in a display that, for the first time, the entire watching world could see broadcast live, the ocean itself seeming to erupt with light and motion as humanity's combined fleet shot up into the sky to meet an invasion force 63 ships strong. The battle that followed was unlike anything either side had fought before. The Dominion, confident in their overwhelming numbers, pushed forward in a broad, crushing formation, expecting to simply overwhelm the smaller defending fleet through sheer weight of numbers. But the combined human and free accord fleet did not fight the way the Dominion expected. Elena Vasquez led the first strike group, using tactics learned from decades of free accord experience, combined with the unique advantage of human ships that could dive beneath the ocean's surface at will, something the Dominion fleet had no way to follow or predict. "Dive formation, now," Elena called out, and 6 ships, human and free accord alike, plunged suddenly back beneath the waves, vanishing from Dominion sensors entirely, only to burst back up through the water minutes later, at a completely different position, striking at the enemy fleet's flank, before diving away again. The Dominion had never fought an enemy that could simply disappear into the ocean and reappear somewhere else entirely. Their formation, so effective against enemies who fought only in open space, struggled to adapt to a battlefield that included the crushing depths of an entire planet's oceans. "Their sensors can't track us underwater," Kaito reported, with something like disbelief, as Trident IV surfaced for the third time that battle, immediately opening fire on an unprepared Dominion cruiser, before diving away again. "We keep vanishing, and they keep losing track of where we'll come up next." "Use it," Rhea's voice came through the comm from the command center. "Every dive buys you time to reposition. Every surface strike cost them ships they didn't see coming." The strategy worked, but it was not without cost. 3 hours into the battle, a free accord ship took a direct hit from the massive Dominion flagship's main weapon, the same devastating beam that had nearly struck Meridian's fleet weeks earlier. The ship did not survive the impact, and for the first time in the entire war, humanity and its allies suffered a loss they could not undo. Vesic Thorn, flying alongside the human fleet in her own command vessel, took the loss with the grim, steady acceptance of someone who had lived through a century of similar losses. "We mourn later," she said, over the shared comm channel. "Right now, we fight." The battle raged for nearly 6 hours, the longest sustained engagement humanity had ever fought, human and free accord ships diving and surfacing across the Pacific in a desperate, coordinated effort to whittle down the overwhelming Dominion numbers without losing themselves in the process. Slowly, painfully, the tide began to turn. Dominion ships, unable to effectively track the diving human vessels, began taking damage far beyond what their commanders had anticipated. their formation growing ragged and disorganized as ship after ship fell to the relentless hit-and-run tactics of the defending fleet. By the 5th hour, the Dominion's smaller escort ships had been reduced from 50 to under 30, and the massive flagship itself had begun showing signs of damage from a coordinated strike by nearly a dozen human and free accord ships working together, diving in unison to strike the same section of the flagship's hull repeatedly before it could adjust its defenses. Priya, watching from the command center, had one final idea, born from weeks of studying the flagship's design, based on sensor data gathered throughout the battle. Its main weapon needs almost 30 seconds to charge, she reported urgently to Rhea. If we can get a concentrated strike on the charging mechanism during that window, we might be able to disable it entirely. Kaito, Yara, do you copy? Rhea relayed the plan immediately to the two pilots closest to the flagship's position. Copy, Kaito responded, already banking Trident 4 toward the massive vessel. Naledi, target the weapon housing the second it starts to charge. The plan required perfect timing. As the Dominion flagship began charging its devastating main weapon once more, aiming for a cluster of human ships regrouping near the ocean's surface, Kaito and Yara dove their ships directly toward the charging weapon, weaving through a storm of defensive fire from smaller Dominion escorts. Almost there, Naledi called out, her hands steady on the targeting controls despite the chaos around them. 10 seconds. 5, 3, fire. Both ships released their weapons simultaneously, striking the flagship's charging main weapon at the precise moment of its greatest vulnerability. The resulting explosion tore through the weapon housing, sending a shockwave of secondary detonations rippling across the flagship's massive hull. The Dominion flagship, its primary weapon destroyed, and its hull heavily damaged, began a slow, ponderous retreat, followed shortly by the remnants of its escort fleet. What had begun as 63 ships confidently descending on a single planet ended, 6 hours later, with barely 20 damaged vessels limping back toward the edge of the solar system, their conquest of Earth abandoned, at least for now. In Meridian's command center, a silence fell as the retreating Dominion fleet's readings slowly faded from the sensors, replaced eventually by a single, overwhelming realization that spread through the room like a wave. They had won. The celebration that followed, both in Meridian and across the surface world watching the battle unfold on every screen on the planet, was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. For the first time since the discovery of the alien war signal years earlier, the people of Earth allowed themselves to believe, truly believe, that survival was possible, that the galaxy's endless war had found them, and they had not simply been swept aside. Kaito and Naledi returned to Meridian's shipyard to find it filled with cheering crowds, human and free accord alike, celebrating a victory that had seemed impossible only hours earlier. Yara Solberg climbed out of Trident 6 to find Theo waiting for her, and the two exchanged a tired, relieved embrace that needed no words to explain what they had just lived through together. Rhea Okafor stood at the edge of the celebration, watching the joy spread through the city she had spent 11 years building in secret, and allowed herself, finally, a genuine smile. Beside her, Vesic Thorn studied the same scene with quiet respect. You have done something today that no world in the Free Accord has managed in over a century, Vesic said. You have made the Dominion retreat. We didn't win the war, Rhea said. We won one battle. Yes, Vesic agreed. But before today, we had never won even that much. This victory will spread through the Free Accord, and through every world still resisting the Dominion. It will give hope where there has been very little for a very long time. Priya Chandrasekhar found Rhea later that evening, standing on a viewing platform that looked out into the dark waters surrounding Meridian, the same ocean that had hidden humanity's secret preparations for over a decade. What happens now? Priya asked, joining her at the railing. Now we rebuild, we improve, and we prepare for the next fight, Rhea said. The Dominion won't simply accept this defeat and leave us alone forever. They'll come back, eventually, with more ships and better strategies. But we've bought ourselves time, and we've proven something important today. What's that? Rhea looked out at the dark water, thinking of everything Meridian had built in silence and secrecy, of every ship that had risen from beneath the waves, to defend a planet that had once believed itself alone in the universe. We proved that humanity doesn't need to be the strongest force in the galaxy to survive, she said. We just need to be the most stubborn one, and I don't think stubbornness is something we'll ever run short of. Above them, far beyond the dark surface of the ocean, the stars continued their endless, silent watch over a planet that had finally, truly, joined the wider war being fought among them. Somewhere out there, the Dominion regrouped, licking its wounds, already planning its next move. Somewhere else, word of Earth's victory spread through the scattered worlds of the Free Accord, carrying with it a small, fragile spark of hope that had been missing from their long resistance for far too long. And beneath the waves, in the hidden city of Meridian, humanity continued to build, to prepare, and to hold the line, knowing that the war was far from over, but certain, for the first time, that they had every reason to believe they could survive whatever came next. The Galactic War had reached Earth's oceans, and Earth had answered, rising up from beneath the waves not as a conquered world, but as a new and unexpected force among the stars, ready to fight for its place among the countless worlds, still resisting the darkness of the Dominion's endless conquest.